Today I've got an interesting video for you that I haven't seen anywhere on the internet, but I think this is a very important thing to be talking about. As minute as it seems, I'd like to talk about how you can feed the ball properly. Now, this is something that I see people routinely not get right. It seems like it'd be something that's very easy to do, and yet it's deceptively hard. It's really not that bad. Let me show you how to do it. Let's jump in. If you're having trouble putting the ball into play consistently, here are a few things that you might be doing incorrectly. First, and possibly the most important reason why you're having trouble, is you're using your actual forehand grip to get the ball into play instead of a continental grip. When you use your forehand grip, it's very difficult to take a ball that's floating in the air without any horizontal velocity or even off of a bounce and hit that ball in a natural way to the other side. It's very different than returning a ball that's been put into play. Generally speaking, your forehand grip is going to have your strings pretty closed. And so when you're trying to make contact with the ball as it's approaching you from the other side, it's perfect. But if you're trying to hit a ball off the ground and hitting a feed, it's often very difficult to control this. A far better thing to do is to use a continental grip and allow your racket to drop across your body right in line with the ball. If you've watched my video on the 3 physics concepts that will change the way that you play tennis, you will know that the ball and the racket free fall at the same rate. This is very key to making good contact with your strokes in general, and definitely so with a feed as well. The key with hitting a good feed is allowing your racket to drop freely with gravity in time with the ball. So when you toss the ball into play, you float it up just a little bit right as you float your racket, and then you just let the two things fall together, which results in a perfectly timed feed that you don't have to coordinate with your strokes. Compare the difference between setting up a shot and trying to hit it with your normal ground stroke, which is just taking the ball, dropping, and just letting that racket drop across your body, and then with just a little flick of the wrist, you put the ball into play. The advantage of using a continental grip on your feed not only allows the contact point to be nice and low without you having to try to time it too much with your physical coordination, it also puts very little spin on the ball. It gives you just enough flexibility that you can put a little bit of topspin if you wish, put a little bit of underspin if you wish, or you can hit it completely flat. And when you're trying to put the ball into play, you don't want to put too much spin on the ball, and you don't want to make it too aggressive. Now, it's important to keep in mind when you're feeding that you're not trying to do any sudden, jerky movements, and you're not really hitting it like a volley, right? This is not the way that you want to hit a feed, and you definitely don't want to be doing a back and forth quick motion. It's very important that you don't use a lot of muscle and put a lot of stress on your body when you're feeding. Rather, you just take small, relaxed, dropped kind of shots where the racket just falls across your body and goes into the ball. With this in mind, it's very easy to control the amount of power that you use based on how big the drop is. If I want to drop the racket from a big distance, it's going to give me a decent amount of power to put the ball into play from baseline. However, if I want to place the ball a little bit softer to the player, I just take a smaller pendulum swing here. This is also mentioned in the physics video. If you have a pendulum, which my shoulder and my arm and my racket make a pendulum, it doesn't matter how far back you draw the pendulum to fall, it's always going to swing at the same rate. Therefore, I can swing with the same rhythm with a very small swing as I do with a more pronounced larger swing. The real secret here is to embrace the gravity and allow the gravity to do all the work, both in the float and drop of the toss and in the float and drop of the racket. Now, if I find myself at the net, I have a few different options with how I want to feed. If I want to feed the ball as more of a volley, I take the same feeling of float, but instead of dropping across my body this way, I'm going to pull the racket through like a mock volley, like so. Or if I'm feeding more as a parent or a teacher, I might feed with a little bit of a softer feed, but with a more flat or even a little bit of topspin by just dropping it across nice and low. And I can either hold it down low like this with an abbreviated swing, or I can choke up on it a little bit more, which will naturally lessen the power. But it's the same concept. The only difference here is that when I choke up, I'm going to naturally swing a little bit faster, and the ball is still going to be going a little bit slower by just virtue of the fact that the racket is choked up a little bit and there's just less power going into the shot. So like a lot of strokes that you'll see in tennis, the key to getting this form right is to really relax and take a little bit of a leap of faith. Start with some shadow strokes and just allow the racket to float and drop across your body very similar to the way that you'd be practicing a shadow stroke for a normal ground stroke. The only difference here is that you're using a continental grip and you're visually in contact right around here by the baseline or your front foot. Then once you get a sense of that, just float the racket and the ball into the air with each other, and then allow them to drop in and start getting into a rhythm of just feeding across the net. Maybe put up a target and see if you can get into a rhythm feeding the ball like this. Trust me, over time, adapting to a continental grip is going to have a big impact on how accurately you can feed, and it's a lot easier than trying to persist with your normal topspin grip. As always, if you found this video helpful, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. And let me know in the comments if there's anything that I missed or anything that you want to add to this conversation. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.